Hi, my name is Andrew, and I've created a piece of software I'm calling Airwave Expression Pro, and it acts as an intermediary between ROLI products and your DAW. Now, one important feature of this program is that it does receive MIDI data from an expected source, and it then sends that data to a target source, which in this situation is a MIDI device that you'll create in Loop MIDI, quite similar to how you set up the Airwave. This is specifically designed for the Airwave, and also I have built it around blocks, so specifically Seaboard blocks. However, it should work with piano. It should also work with all of the Seaboards as well. I don't own any of the higher end Seaboards. I own 2 Seaboard blocks and a piano. I haven't tested it on the piano, but you may find that there are some issues. If there are, feel free to let me know on GitHub, and I'll see what I can do to fix it. So the reason why I wanted to build this is because ROLI Airwave is really cool. There's 5 dimensions, 5 separate things that you can do to control 5 separate things all with your hands really quick. It's probably the most seamless way of interacting with a DAW that I've ever seen. And then combine that with a Seaboard, which I think is more powerful than a piano. I have the piano. I have the ROLI piano. I really, compared to the Seaboard, I don't like it. The piano just doesn't have the same capabilities, and we'll get into that in a second. So what I've done is I basically set up a few features. I bypassed the sustain pedal. So if you're using the sustain, my program completely rewrites the code for the sustain because it doesn't work at all. It doesn't use their sustain. It just receives the MIDI message and then sends the MIDI message forward. But it's a new MIDI message that I've programmed myself because the sustain pedal should do a little more than what ROLI's software is doing. Now, I'm not blaming ROLI. There's a lot of bugs in their program, but they're a really busy company and they're not very big. So the amount of time to get around to fixing any of these things, probably, up to a year or more. And that is assuming they even want to make it for you. So the way that they set this up is beautiful because it's kind of like having a little mod. When you play games and the games have mods, same kind of idea. You get to insert a mod. It's not violating anybody's privacy. It's not opening up anyone's software. It's just a very simple way of fixing some problems. And that's a great thing, and it's doable because of the way ROLI has actually set up their software. Again, these are probably 2 of the most legendary instruments ever made, in my personal opinion. You can control everything with them. So let's go ahead and look at the program that I've made and exactly how to set it up. When you first open it up, this is what it's going to look like. Now, if you're at all familiar with the Airwave, you already know that there is a program that runs on your computer that handles Airwave messages. And one of the big solutions to this is actually just set your Airwave to be on always. That really does solve things. But the other major solution is to have a fixed Airwave connection if it does crash on you. It does stop working. So there's that button right there. These don't worry about this right now. So your first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick the Airwaves, the expression that you picked that ROLI told you to set up, and that's the Airwave expression. And then you're going to set up the pedal. They don't talk about this anywhere, but this is the Airwave pedal. Whatever your keyboard that you're going to use, whether it's the blocks, I set it up to only show you ROLI keyboards because this stuff is pretty particular. I guess realistically you could use it with an Expressive. You probably could use it with an X key. There's probably a few other programs you could use it with, but I've just set it up to work with ROLI products. And then the target, you're going to create in Loop MIDI, you're going to create a... I wish I had that set up to show you, but I didn't. But you're going to create a temporary device, or a virtual device, and name it ROLI Airwave Pro, and then you're going to select it. And once you got that set up, you've got the options here to turn on or turn off global sustain. If you don't have a sustain pedal, turn these off. It'll screw everything up. If you do have a sustain pedal, this gives you a lot of flexibility. So you're going to see a whole bunch of settings here. There's tons of settings. First thing is, I don't know if these buttons actually work. I've set them up. I don't remember what I did. So don't worry about these right now. Probably these assignments don't work. However, all of these assignments do work. So what we have is visuals here. So if I move my hand around in front of my ROLI, you can see that I can see what's going on. If I move my other hand, you can see that we can see what's going on. And that gives me what I need from the ROLI. I can tell what's going on, right? left hand, right hand. The top bar is the input, the bottom bar is the output. So if I modify the smoothing, for example, and this fixes some jitter. Sometimes there's a little bit of jitter. Sometimes it just gives you a different sound that you might want to use it. Anyways, so now if I do this, oh, my bad, I pulled the wrong knob there. If I do this, right, you're going to see that the smoothing takes a long time to go up, and then if I release, it takes a long time to go back down. Actually, it's not working correctly there, but I'll fix that later. Yeah, that's not working the way it should, but I'll fix that later. But well, it'll come down the same way it goes up, basically. So it takes some time to go up, and then it takes some time to go down. The next thing is that each of these have sustain capabilities. And what that means is if you press the sustain pedal, sometimes you're going to want features to work, sometimes you're not. For example, sometimes if you press the pressure button, you're going to want pressure to actually be sustained. Maybe you don't want pressure to be sustained. Disabling this stops the sustain messages from being sent on that specific dimension. And so this is, if you had by the way, if you had a piano set up here, you wouldn't see slide or glide, you'd only see pressure. So you have control over the sustain across all of these. Mirror is another really useful feature. Mirror allows us to use both hands at the same time. So the value is sent for both hands at the same time. And to me, this is important because if I want to use my left hand and then I decide I want to use my right hand, I can't have, many programs don't allow you to assign two values to the same CC, or one value to the, two CCs to the same value. So you can't have, for example, you can't have volume. You can't have volume here assigned to both CC28 and CC29. I don't know why I've put L in there. L is supposed to be above that. I'm tired. I've been doing this for about 12 hours. Anyway, so yeah, so you can't assign to two. So mirror allows both signals to be sent, the same signal to be sent to both channels. And so what we've got here is we've got this this drop down that allows you to choose high, average, left, and right. This is what decides which priority occurs, which one gets priority if you use both hands at the same time. So if I use both hands, you can see that both hands have input. Only one of those is actually controlling the output. And you can see that the left hand right now is, and that's probably because it's got a bit of jitter, but the higher one, whoever's higher, whoever has the higher value right now. But I can change that. I can change that to be, say for example, I want it to be the right hand, right? I could change it to be the right hand. It doesn't matter who's higher. It's always going to be the right hand. See, so you have control over which one takes priority, and that's important. This sustain time, I'm gonna demonstrate what that does. Sustain release time is how long it takes after you press a button for the sustain to go back down to 0. And this is important because sometimes you get some choppy noise, right? Now, most people are probably going to use an envelope of some sort. But in this, not necessarily, right? I like to use my hands as the envelope. I don't like to use an envelope on the software because then I'm not really fully in control. And so having this sustained release time is kind of like having an envelope. You have full control over exactly how much it's going to be. It's always going to be the same value, and you can get familiar with it. And it doesn't have to be much, but it does give it a little bit of a time before it drops down to 0 so it doesn't have the clicking sound when it drops, which is annoying, especially if you don't use an envelope. Now, not all programs have a clicking sound, but the weird thing is with the ROLI Seaboards, especially the blocks click no matter what, and sometimes they start and click. So I've resolved a lot of those issues. You can also turn off the various different settings here, make sure that they just go directly from the Airwave expression to the Airwave Pro, and you don't actually handle any of that data. So you can do that by just deselecting these. And then lastly, there's a conflict transition time here, and this is when there is a note that you've pressed and then you press it again. Because we're working with MPE, I had to make sure that we were able to transition from that note appropriately. And it sounds weird if you have sustain pedals, and even ROLI had a hard time handling it with their Airwave app. And you'll probably notice if you play any of their keys or any of their pianos or any of their synths inside the Airwave app, they all sound a little weird whenever you're using a sustain pedal, and that's because they're not transitioning from the last value that you pressed on the same key into the next value that you pressed. They just jump, and then so you get like glitchy periods where it just jumps from where it was to where you're pressing now. So we're going to go ahead with Pigments here. I'm just going to show you a quick little setup here, kind of detailing how we've resolved some of these issues, how I resolved some of these issues, so that you can take full advantage of your ROLI products. So yeah, let's go ahead and have a peek. So first thing, before I even go into Pigments, I'm just going to keep the ROLI app open, and so you can kind of see what's going on. Okay. All right. So we got some good action going on there. Let's have a look. I'm switching from my left to my right hand, but because we got that mirroring on, it works seamlessly. If there was no mirroring, we'd have a very difficult time being able to actually get what we want. I actually want that on raise as well. So now, I'm going to show you what happens if I press a sustain pedal and then press a note. If I release, it instantly cuts. And to me, I just don't want that. But I don't want to apply an envelope in here because I have reasons. I don't even know how to explain it right now. So we'll turn up the sustain time here. I'll probably add an actual value later, but for now, let's just do that. All right, so now if I press, you can hear that there's a release time. It takes a little time to get down to 0. And that's good. All right, we're not using an envelope in this situation. This allows me to have the same settings across every different instrument that I use. I know that's going to take time to fade out the pressure value that I've actually pressed. The next thing is there's a transition period. So we're going to go here and press, hold sustain, let go. And the transition is actually working great. So now, I've pressed the sustain pedal, and I've pulled my hands away. But I've got all these notes on sustain, so we're sustaining everything. Being able to hold that sustain is really important because you can sustain all of the Airwave features and you can control which one of them you actually want to sustain, and that's a big deal, and ROLI doesn't give you that, and they need to. So being able to do that allows you to control which elements you want to sustain. You realistically, if you had maybe I'll make one of these. I'm actually currently working on making a mod wheel, a USB mod wheel. Maybe I'll make a thing that handles multiple sustain pedals, and you could have multiple sustain pedals handling each individual different thing. I don't know. But you see the benefit of being able to at least control them. So yeah, I think that kind of helps everybody. Thanks for watching.